Mary, what are the steps to establishing a bee lawn?
Well, that is one of the questions we set out to answer. We have 5 different plots here. And the first one, we just put the flower seed down on an existing lawn. That's like the easiest way. Would that work? And then the next one, we scalped it. We actually cut it down as low as we could, and then we put the seed on. The third one, we renovated completely. We got rid of, killed everything there, got rid of all the duff, had just bare soil, and then we put down the flowers and grass seed. Then number 4, we cut it down really, really low and aerated it and put the seed on. And then number 5, we just aerated it and put the seed on. So we tried to go from less work to more work to see what would work. And so then we've compared these. Now this is our 6th summer of looking at these. So the best results so far have still been the scalping, and then if you can scalp and aerate, that's good. The next best was total renovation. And the least effective has been just throwing out the seed. So, as one would expect. But if you have some bare soil now in your lawn, you can rake, specifically rake those areas with a garden rake, and clover and thyme and prunella. Those are the 3. We use white clover, creeping thyme, which is Thymus cerphyllum. That's a different thyme than our culinary thyme. And then Prunella vulgaris, or self-heal. That's a native. The other 2, thyme and white clover, are not natives. But those 3 flowers are what we used. And then on some of the plots, we used fine fescues. So we did a combination of those in putting these down. But if I had to say right now what's the best way to do it, if you already have a lawn, cut it down as low as you can stand, which is scalping, like 1 inch or less. And then if you can aerate it to make those holes, and then put the seed down and water it for 2 weeks. That's what we did. Then I think you'll get some good results.
So you didn't actually till up the whole area then?
No, just one of the plots we did that. And that tilling up the whole area, we used glyphosate or Roundup, so we killed everything that was here. What was here to begin with, this is more of a farm field with pasture grasses, quackgrass, orchard grass, things like that. There's some fescue and Kentucky bluegrass, but it's kind of a field area. So in one of our demonstration plots, we got rid of everything, down to clear soil. And the first year that looked the worst, because what came up was all the weed seed. Foxtail, some quackgrass came up, Kentucky bluegrass. But the next year it kind of looked okay. And right now today, 6 years later, this plot has the most of the fine fescue and a lot of thyme, and it has prunella, and it has white clover. So this is looking pretty good. But overall, I still would advocate for scalping short, aerating, and then putting down your seed.
Mary, what is the grass that you use to mix along in with the bee lawn?
Well, we used fine fescue, and there are a lot of different fine fescues. Sheep's fescue, chewing red, creeping fescue, hard fescue. Any of the fine fescues are really good choices to use if you want to do a bee lawn, because they're slow growing and they're very drought tolerant. They're low maintenance grasses. We do think of them a lot for shade, and they're good in shade, but they're great in sun. They go both ways, shade and sun. So fine fescue is a really good choice to use because it won't compete, especially if you're not watering and not fertilizing. And those kind of go hand in hand with the bee lawn. They're for people who want a lower maintenance lawn.
Why did you choose the flower species that you did?
That's another very good question. And Ian Lane was a grad student, and then James Wolfen. They both did a lot of experiments on cutting different grasses and what would flower when they were cut. So as we know, a lot of things don't flower when you keep repetitively cutting them off. So what would still flower? And that's how we came up with the white clover. And then the creeping thyme, that's kind of threw me off because I've had thyme die in my garden many years, many Minnesotans have. But this Thymus cerphyllum is, it's a very robust type of thyme, and it's a very fine seed. We put down the seed, but the first year or two, I thought, that's not gonna live, it's not gonna live. And now, 6 years later, you can see they're huge carpets of the thyme that's here. So a little slow to begin, but it's very, very good. And the third, prunella. Prunella is a plant that is native in Minnesota. It is in the mint family, which can be quite aggressive, but it's not as aggressive as Creeping Charlie or even the heel-all, which we do weed out of our lawns and gardens. So prunella is it's persistent and it will flower on and off through the summer. It's the flower that we have the least of in the lawns overall. That has not done as well, but it provides wonderful food for bees.
When is the best time if you want to try to establish a bee lawn? When is the best time of year to do that?
Well, we did it in June. So springtime is good. Now we don't think of that as the best time for lawn grasses, but we wanted these flowers to establish. So that's why we did it in June. And then we put irrigation on here. We kept the water on for 2 weeks, every other day if it was hot. And after 2 weeks, it was over. We have never watered in here again.
Can you do this in the shade too, or does it have to be in the sun?
Well, the flowers will do better in the sun. The fine fescue that's pretty much okay for shady areas, but the sun, you get more flowers in the sun, so it grows better in the sun.
Mary, how do you mow and care for this bee lawn?
So we try to let it go to 6 inches and then we cut it to 4. So that 1/3 cut rule of thumb, we still try to maintain that. The 4 inches is higher, but that's a good amount. That's a nice height to get as many flowers as possible on the flowers.
Does this lawn go dormant in the summer like a bluegrass lawn often does when it gets hot and dry?
A little bit, but the flowers, especially the thyme, has a good heat tolerance and drought tolerance. You know, that is one of the herbs that has a good drought tolerance. So it's not as brown as sometimes the lawns are as well, right?
How about those goofy dandelions or other weeds?
Yeah, so if you don't like dandelions or broadleaf plantain, maybe knotweed that comes in, you can spot treat for those. So if you want to spot treat or do hand weeding, that's what we recommend. But of course, any broadleaf herbicide is going to kill the thyme, the prunella, and the white clover is a little bit more tolerant, but it still will be set back from a broadleaf herbicide. So if you basically don't use a herbicide on a bee lawn and you do spot treatment for plants that you don't want.
Do you do that in the spring, summer, or fall, or just kind of whenever it works for you?
Whenever it works for you. I think most people are bothered by the dandelions in the springtime, but whenever you see the most there and that it's in accordance with the directions on the label for the temperature and what you're using, how you're using it. So as far as other concerns like pests or diseases, a lot of people are concerned about grubs or insects on the lawn. We see none of that with the bee lawn because many of those things feed on turf or grasses, and we're putting in non-grasses. So there really are very few other pest or disease problems with the bee lawn.
Mary, I've heard or read about the Lawns to Legumes program. What is that all about?
Yeah, that's an amazing program where Minnesota is leading the nation in actually putting in bee lawns or legumes like our white clover and so on from a homeowner standpoint and a community standpoint. So we actually had legislation, laws that made money available to individuals and communities to put in bee lawns. So that's very progressive and different thinking than a lot of other states. So as an individual, I could have gotten up to $350. I had to match that 25% if I would have participated. But it's to buy the plants, to buy the materials, to have a consultant maybe even advise you or help you to get your bee lawn in. And then as a community, the money was much more, from $2,000 to $40,000 in a community effort, public spaces or parks or schools. So both of those programs were great. It's an amazing online resource. So you can find out how to put in a bee lawn online. There's lots of directions and information. There are pocket plantings, there are tree and shrub plantings, and then there are prairie plantings. So there's 4 different ways in your own landscape you can increase the area for pollinators.